Okay, well, we'll just go ahead and start because it's 2:01 and I want everybody to get in and ask some questions in the chat box or the question and answer box and that we can get to it. So everybody, welcome to another New Church Impact. Today we have a special guest. Uh, this person is not only an author, which we're going to be talking about their book, but also uh, actor, political consultant, and coach, not only for activists, but just life coach in general. And Omkari Williams is here to educate us um, about micro-activism, and as we have been kind of going through these past few years, couple of years, but now more than ever this past few months, that activism and advocacy is something on the forefront of our minds. Not only has she written Micro-Activism, uh, which is, if you look over to her left shoulder, you see her book. I have my book right here. It's all blurry right now. Yeah, there we go. Oh, there we go. Micro-Activism. Um, I actually kind of encountered this book just happenstance. I was in Dallas, Texas, walking around SMU, and there's this little bookstore near this taco joint. And I went into the bookstore, and there it was, just sitting there. So I picked it up and I started reading it, and I couldn't let go of it. And so I think I read the whole book while I was in the bookstore. I was like, I'm getting this. So that's how that happened. And I thought to myself, what better way could we engage in conversation about microactivism than getting the author here? So I'm Omkari Williams. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. I'm so pleased to be here, and I love that story, especially that you found my book in Texas makes me super happy.
Yeah, so Omkari, well, can you kind of like tell us a little bit about your background and like how you got to this point of thinking about microactivism?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually goes back to truthfully my childhood. My father was a diplomat and a humanitarian, and so I grew up having a sort of different understanding of the world than probably most kids. It was sort of, I grew up hearing conversations about what was happening in Africa, what was happening in Asia, where other people were talking about what was happening locally. And that was just sort of normal for me. And you know how it is when you're a kid, it's like you think everyone's family is like your family, right? And I remember thinking, that what I wanted to do when I grew up was do something like what my dad did. And then I grew up and I realized I don't have the temperament to do the kinds of work my dad did. He wound up working in war zones like Bosnia during the conflict or
Mm,
Rwanda during the genocide. And I was like, no, that is not something that psychologically I could navigate. I mean, I knew that about myself. And so I started thinking about, well, what can I do? And everything seemed so big and so daunting. And one day I just thought, well, what's the smallest thing I can do? And so I did this just one tiny thing. I think one of my first actions was to write a check to Habitat for Humanity.
mm,
And that one small action led me down a path of, oh, I can do another small thing. And starting to understand how things accumulate, that everything doesn't have to be big, everything doesn't have to be splashy. What matters is doing the thing you can do and then doing it consistently. And so I just set myself on that path of I'm going to do what I can do consistently. And that was true even when I was an actor, even when I was a political consultant. I always did something. And it made me feel good. I mean,
mm,
let's be honest, we're not going to do things that are painful for us, not consistently.
right.
And I thought, I'm probably not alone in this. And so I started talking to some of my friends, and eventually it just evolved. I mean, it just became how I did things, and I encouraged other people. And it was kind of like that. The other thing I want to say is that although I'm perfectly happy speaking to people, I am really an introvert. And
Mm,
I needed to find ways to make a difference that suit that temperament. And microactivism worked because it also gave me a way to do something and then go back and recharge my batteries.
yeah.
I wasn't tapping myself out all the time. So that's sort of the short story of how this all came to be.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that's so interesting. And you've written other pieces that I've seen that you said activism for introverts, and you use that kind of like tagline in there, which is really interesting because you know we're in a church context. You know, we have a lot of congregations out there that are socially justice minded, but they may not have maybe the willpower or the gumption or the to be like, you know, marching like with UFW or the Poor People's Campaign, you know, sort of thing. But they
Right.
really have this inkling of like we need to do something, but
Yes.
we don't know where to start. And that's what I love about your writing here. You make it accessible to so many people who might not be able to have that uh, you know, lead from the front sort of kind of thing. And you break it down into four different kind of archetypes of
Yes.
activists.
Yeah.
Can you lead us through some of that?
Sure. And let me say something to your comment about leading from the front. If everyone's leading from the front, nothing gets done,
Right.
right? So the archetypes actually came out of my understanding that you can't have everyone lead from the front, and that's not everyone's tendency or temperament to start with. So the archetypes also relate to my time as an actor. I started looking at it as if I was casting a movie, what would be the things I would need to do? So the first archetype is the headliner. So that's the star, that's the face of the movement, like Dr. King or Greta Thunberg,
Mm,
right? Everybody knows that person. Then you have the producer. And the producer is the person who looks at the big picture, says what needs to happen, what are the different aspects that we need to be covering, and they break it down so that everyone has an assignment. Next, you have the organizer, and they're sort of like the person I always say on a movie, no movie was ever made without food and coffee. It's just never happened in the history of filmmaking. There is always food, there is always coffee on a set.
mhm,
So
mhm,
the person who is in charge of that, it's called craft services in the industry. They're the organizer for that particular group. And then you have an organizer for the art department. So the organizer has their specific area that they're focused on. And then the last group are the indispensables. And the indispensables would be like the background actors on a film. And people might say, oh, well, you know, what's the big deal with the background actors? But if you think about it, you've never seen a movie without background actors with, I can think of one movie that was a two-person film. Every other movie, you have the people in the store or the people on the street or the people, you know, who just are doing their lives. And that's what makes it look real. But in the world of activism, those background actors are the people in the office who are stuffing the envelopes, who are making sure there's coffee in the break room, who are making sure that there's toilet paper in the bathroom, or that people know where the march is going to be, or that maps are printed.
mhm,
Without them, everything falls apart. But that's true for each specific archetype. You need each of them and you need all of them. And
mm.
none of them is more important than any of the others.
Right. And I would say probably there's more folks that line up into like more of the organizer and the indispensables than the rest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I sometimes when I'm doing a talk, I'll ask people to self-identify. An organizer and indispensable are absolutely the largest categories.
Hmm. And if people really want to find out of what kind of archetype they are, they can go onto your website, is
Yes.
that correct? And look underneath archetype tests,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
there's a quiz there.
Yeah. So that's very awesome. Because I think of Enneagram when I think of those kinds of things. I love
Hmm.
the Enneagram.
Yeah, me too. I think part of this is all, there, my sort of little witchy, I like to know about, what's motivating people side of myself that helped me come up with the archetypes as well.
Right. And as you figure out your own type, a lot of people might be asking, okay, so what is the definition of microactivism? And I'm reading from page 17 of your book here, and you say microactivism might be creating a community garden that brings fresh fruit and vegetables to those living in a food desert. It might be working with a literacy program at the local high school. It could be bringing visual or performing arts to kids who are not typically exposed to art, or it might be knocking on doors to encourage people to exercise their right to vote. And so it seems like microactivism can encompass a lot of different things. The main thing it sounds like is this compounding effect. So
Absolutely.
do you want to like expand more on that?
Yeah, and I'll use as an example the marches that we had on Saturday. So last Saturday, there were, I think it was 1,400 marches were scheduled around the country and also marches outside of the US. And the latest number that I've heard is that 5 million people
Mm,
participated in these marches.
hmm
So think of it this way, if there are 10 marches and there are 1,000 people, that's still impressive, right?
hmm
But when you have 5 million people participating in something, you have exponentially increased the reach. You've exponentially increased the power because numbers mean something in our society.
Right.
We vote by numbers, generally speaking.
hmm
If we're in a group and there are two different options, we'll say, we'll take a vote, and the people who have the largest numbers win. So numbers matter. Numbers equate to power, whether it's which restaurant you're going to or who's going to be your president. It's Our society is set up to be a democracy where the larger numbers get to decide when there's a decision to be made.
hmm
And so when you bring in all of these people from all walks of life, different races, different sexual orientations, different ideas about what matters, you are compounding democracy. You are making democracy stronger. You are making the voice of the people stronger. And I think, especially now, that's super important because I think that we have lost our connection to the power of the voice of the people. And we're starting to find that again and reconnect to that. And that's incredibly important in this time where a small number of people are trying to make life perfect for them and pretty terrible for the rest of us.
hmm Yeah, and what I love about your approach is like, it's kind of countercultural in our culture, which you speak about in this about go big or go home sort of mentality, and that actual mentality is not conducive for us in this kind of work,
Mm-mm.
right? And that with this collective power that's building on each other and compounding, it does get big,
Yes,
you know,
it
and,
does.
and then becomes effective.
And, go big or go home is not sustainable. It's just, you can't be putting 100% energy out all the time. Nobody can.
Mm,
But you can be doing a little bit every day or every week. That you can do. And it's like interest in the bank. It builds up. And it
mhm,
also strengthens your capacity. The more we do, the more we're able to do. And that is also important because people sometimes feel like, well, what can I do? How am I going to make a difference? And I'm like, well, it's not just you.
mhm,
But even if it were just you, let's say you decided to just feed one hungry person. You're not solving the problem of global hunger, but it certainly matters to the person you fed,
mm,
right? And
mm.
I think we need to change our mindset about only things that have huge impact are important and recognize that that isn't true. We can individually send out ripples that change the world.
Mm. Yeah, so powerful. And it reminds me of the scriptures, bringing it into a Christian context. Matthew 25 talks about when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you
Yes.
gave me drink.
Yes.
They might have not been solving the hunger issue for everybody, but just
No.
for that person. And eventually, to the least of these, we've done unto Christ himself, so it just speaks to my heart so much when we're talking about this. And then there's an element of empowerment when you're able to, invite people to kind of be collective together to cause uh, positive change for the common good.
It it's so energizing,
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I remember being a teenager and I grew up in Manhattan and lived a block away from Riverside Park, which is right on the Hudson River, and it's this lovely park.
Mm,
And there was this one day where they invited the community to come out and help repaint the benches because it is New York and it's cold in the winter and it's wet and eventually the paint peels off and they're not that lovely to sit on. So a whole bunch of my friends and I went out and, we helped scrape and paint park benches. And it wasn't like it was glamorous work, but it was so much fun to do it as teams
mm,
and to just make that impact and make our little neighborhood nicer for people. I mean, that was, a long time ago, and I still think about it and think about how much fun it was and how I learned something about working in community that day.
mm. Wow, that's beautiful. And as people are thinking about this approach, some of them might say, okay, well, I'm passionate a lot of things, and you have in your book a place of write a what I stand for list.
Yes.
Right? And you go through these questions, ask yourself, what do I stand for? Do you feel overwhelmed by the question? Taking some time to make a list, and then you've got your possibly massive list, and that in here that you're going to be like Noah's Ark, pick two, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this process?
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really the case is there are so many things to care about. I mean, holy moly, right?
Mm,
Just if I were to start, I could talk for an hour about all the things I care about. But I can't do anything about all of those things. I'm one person, I have limited time and limited energy. And so what I realized is if I were to pick the things I care about most and focus on those, that's the way I make the biggest impact. And it's true for all of us. And something that I saw and the march sort of tied into this, when I looked around at the signs at the march, they covered the gamut. People were interested in all sorts of different things
yeah.
as evidenced by their signs, which
Hmm.
speaks to my point, which has always been, don't worry, there are 8 billion people on the planet. If you focus on your thing, there are other people focused on other things that you care about. That you're not focused on that thing doesn't mean you don't care about it. It means you have a limited capacity and you're trying to be as effective as you can be. So pick your one or your two things and just put your mind to working on those. I mean, sometimes something will come up and it'll shift you off of your main thing. Like when the current administration in their first iteration was putting people in cages at the border.
Mm,
I mean, that was something that had never been on. I mean, it just had never occurred to me that that would ever happen. But when it happened, it took me off of one of my main areas for a few months until I felt like, okay, people who know a lot more about this and have more resources are handling it. And then
mhm,
I went back to my two things and let that one be taken care of by other people. And
mhm,
I think there's part of the important lesson in that is that we have to trust people. We have to trust that people will do the right thing. We don't have to do everything. Other people will do the right thing. And together, we'll get it all covered.
yeah. I happened to be at a March for Democracy here in Kansas City, and yeah, there was like different people from different walks that had different issues with the situation, and there was like this intersection going on, and it
Right.
shows the beauty of the diversity of what we're called to, right?
Yes.
And you know, there could be some points where your thing intersects with another person's thing, and you can collaboratively work together for
Yep.
change. You know, I think about
Yeah.
Standing Rock with the water
Yes.
protectors and the environmentalists. You know, there's some a common ground, even though they're coming from different locations, social locations about it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so
I mean, and even people on sort of opposite sides of the political spectrum. I mean, an example that I like is Van Jones, the commentator, Black commentator, progressive, and Newt Gingrich, former Republican Speaker of the House, who probably agree on like two things, maybe, like, and one of them is that water is wet.
uh-huh.
Um, Came to agree that our system of incarceration was unfair. And
Mm,
they both worked to get the First Step Act passed, which got like 30,000 people out of prison for nonviolent drug offenses
mm,
that the current president actually signed into law, which completely shocked me, but anything's possible apparently.
right.
But these two people who have diametrically opposed ideologies found common ground on something, not for the same reason. Gingrich came at it from a more religious perspective of forgiveness and redemption. And
Mm,
Van Jones came at it from the perspective of this is wrong, partly because it is so disproportionately impacting Black and Brown people.
mm.
But they found common ground and they made something really good happen. So, you don't have to be a purist. You
Right.
can find common ground with people who you don't have a whole lot in common with otherwise.
Mm. Yeah, that's awesome. And you know, the thing is, like, you know, when you're able to say your two things, what I like what you say about the book is like it develops a deepness to it versus the
Yeah.
shallow, and that there's
Yeah.
difference right in that. You want to
Yeah.
speak more about that kind of thing?
I think that's something that is we're really in danger of in this society because we're so inundated with information is being shallow around things. We don't, because depth takes time, depth takes attention and energy. And when there are a billion things and you're trying to do something about all billion of them, there's no opportunity for depth. But if you can say, no, you know what? I'm going to trust that other people are digging deep on other things, and I'm going to dig deep on these two things so that I really know what I'm talking about, that I really feel grounded in my knowledge and my understanding. That's a whole different thing.
Mm,
And our ability to impact other people really shifts then because people know when you're just sort of spouting nonsense. And they know when you're speaking from a place of deep knowledge and deep commitment. And that's really important. It's really important.
hmm. So as you're consulting with people and
Mhm.
they're like, okay, I got my list. This is the two areas that I want to make an impact in. Okay, so what do I do now to do that to go from okay, theoretical, here's everything on paper, now
Mhm.
rubber meet the road. How do I
Right.
do that?
Uh, okay, first off, there's almost always someone in your community who's already working on what you're working on. So we shouldn't feel like we have to reinvent the wheel. And something that I really love when people do is rather than say, I'm going to start whatever, I'm going to start this organization or I'm going to start this thing over here, is look for the thing that's already there that you
Mhm,
can join in on and you can amplify and that amplification is really important. So, but let's say you can't find an organization, although really you can. I mean, it's a a Google search. You can find something.
mhm.
And then once you, oh, I'm sorry, someone's sawing outside my window. I hope you can't hear
No, I
that.
can't hear it. It's okay.
Okay, great. Um, Once you find the thing that you are interested in and you say, okay, what's the thing that I can do about this thing, and you look at it and you say, let's say, I'm going to say reproductive rights, okay?
Mhm.
So, because there are reproductive rights organizations everywhere. You can join in with one, or you could, if you are not a joiner, you could write a letter to your congressperson. You could
Mhm.
call their office. You could call your state representative. There are things you can find out to do simply by looking at a newspaper and reading what's happening in the reproductive rights arena at the moment. Educating yourself will lead you to action. Once you educate yourself, then it's easy to figure out what to do. It's like, oh, okay, there's a vote coming up on this. I need to call the people who are voting. Or this organization needs some money and I can spare $5. I'm going to send them my $5. And and I literally mean $5. If you have more, great. But again, it's a compounding thing. If everyone who cared sent $5, if they who cared and who had the resources sent $5 to the organizations they cared about, it would be an enormous amount of money.
Mm.
And we often think, well, $5 can't really make a difference. Not one $5 bill, but you get a stack of them and we're talking about being able to do things.
Yeah.
Or you just have a conversation with a neighbor about this and start spreading the word and start getting other people engaged. There are so many opportunities to do things, and none of them has to be something that makes you cringe.
Mm.
None of them has to be something that makes you think, this is just not me.
Mhm.
Start doing the things that you can do. Tiny things, just keep doing them.
Yeah. And a new church ministry, we're responsible to help start new congregations. And one of the things that we're teaching within our curriculum is developing spiritual rhythms, daily spiritual rhythms. And there's a portion in your book that says making activism routine. And that to me is like, you know, uh, t- one of the first steps is developing a routine or a spiritual rhythm of activism, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's like there has to be some sort of rhythm to your activism.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it as making it as regular as brushing your teeth, right?
Mm.
You get up, you brush your teeth. Before you go to bed, you brush your teeth. It's not even a conversation. You don't have to talk yourself into doing it.
Hmm.
It's so habitual that you just do it. And that's how I think of micro-activism, is find a thing that is so small that not doing it seems ridiculous.
Hmm.
And again, small is a term that gets decided by the person doing it. What's small for me may not be small for someone else, and vice versa.
Right.
It's not a competition,
Hmm.
is the other piece. And finding your thing. I mean, I think that calling your representatives on a regular basis still matters in a democracy where things are determined by vote.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's the only thing you should be doing. I think that there are local things one can do that are potentially more impactful, and that we need to pay attention to those. And that can be creating or participating in a mutual aid group. So maybe once a week or once a month, you get together with a bunch of other people in your community and you restock the shelves of a free store, or you have a community meal so that people who are hungry can come and have a decent meal.
Hmm.
There are a whole bunch of different things people can do. And when you pick your thing, then it becomes something you can get excited about and something you can build on. And I think that having it be routine is really important. If you get together with your group on the first Saturday of every month, that's it. That's what you do.
Hmm.
You don't have to think about it. And that community that you build is so affirming and so enhancing of whatever you're doing, because doing things in community is, I think, the best way to consistently show up. Because if it's just us, oof, that gets boring.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, in here you talk about community, the magic of community,
Yeah.
doing it together, and that micro actions in itself are mighty. That's the other thing that I drew from it. And this whole idea of compounding, collaborative, is the key to defeat those big powers at B, whatever that big power is. We have a question here, and we're gonna transition into questions. So if you have
Sure.
questions, put it in the question and answer box or in the chat. I'll try to make sure I'm looking at the chat to see if there's any questions. But the first question is this: how effective is microactivism when the systems that oppress us, including capitalism, racism, sexism, homophobia, etc., are also encompassing and insidious? If we just chip away at these global systems as opposed to addressing how they affect us all and how they are interconnected, how can we successfully dismantle them?
Okay, so that's the premise of that is that it's either or,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't agree with that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's both and. I think we both disrupt the big systems, and we do the small things in our local communities that make a difference. You don't have to choose between those two things. It's funny that that's the first question because I was talking to a friend this morning and this subject came up and I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I want to burn capitalism to the ground, but I'm not going to do that until there are pieces in place that are going to support people, because otherwise there are going to be a lot of people who are badly hurt or lose their lives. You cannot just destroy these systems
Mm.
without having something to replace them. And the something to replace them, I believe, comes out of our communities and our systems of mutual aid, our systems of mutual care, and that is what we need to be focused on at the same time as we are dismantling systems that do not serve the majority of people.
Yeah. I so that your statement there kind of reminds me, there's a great documentary on Hulu about Greta Thunberg. It's like a multi-episode piece,
Oh,
and
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
yeah, and she goes to a place where they rely on coal as a source of energy, but also as a source of employment. And so you could see her like talking with these workers that are just part of the system. It's not that they don't want to be environmentally sound. It's just this is the way that they make their money, and if you just take it away, they're going to starve to death,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And you can kind of see that tension, that dynamic of like, okay, so we need to kind of like progress this forward, but like when we rip it down, there needs to be something else for those who are going to be
Yes.
affected in that way.
Yeah.
So
It you can't just think that you can yank a structure out without something else there,
mhm,
because that structure, however flawed it may be, has been holding, I think, pieces up, which is what we're seeing right now in our country is like they're ripping all these structures out and we're looking at the damage that it's doing.
mhm,
And it's not that I think that all of the structures they're getting rid of are fantastic and should stay, but I don't think that this is the way you do it,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a place for anarchy, but I don't know. We gotta really be tactful about it.
Yeah, I mean, anarchy, leaves people dead in the dust,
Mm,
and that's just something to consider.
yeah, awesome. Well, here's another question here. Uh, would you recommend using social media to become a person of influence on issues you care about?
Okay, so the truth of it is, I think social media is a tool of the devil at this point. Not because of the algorithm, because it doesn't actually just sort of go out in a small d democratic way, right? It it gets cherry picked, and the algorithm is used to stoke anger because anger keeps people on their platforms longer, and that's how they make money.
Mm,
So, and also when people who run these platforms say out loud, we're not going to fact check. We'll allow lies to be platformed because it's making us money.
mm,
I really can't get behind that, which is one of the reasons I'm not very active on social media.
yeah.
But then at the same time, I look at some of my friends who are active on social media and I so appreciate what they're doing. So I think it's a, and this is not to weasel out of answering the question. I think it's a really personal decision, but I think one thing to consider is what impact are you actually having with your social media platform? Is it moving people into action beyond just clicking like on a post?
Mm,
If it is, more power to you. But if it isn't, you might be better served by focusing more on your local community where you can have a more immediate and deeper impact.
mhm. Yeah, and well, and kind of like tying back into your archetypes, and maybe might be your architectural, you know, kind of like preference. Maybe like if you do have a good speaking voice and being able to tell the story, maybe that is a platform
Yeah,
that you need to go on. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So
Yeah, I
again,
mean, it
it's a lot
really
of discernment.
depends, but you have to, I think you need to be very discerning.
Yeah. There's another question here that about the archetypes itself, and when I read this question, I think about how you talk about flexibility in the book.
Okay.
So here's the question: are these archetypes seasonal? I.e., are you a headliner, then you start a family, and then you're more of an organizer or background, while you may have young children?
I love that question so much because, yes, I would not have thought of the word seasonal in that way, but absolutely they're seasonal. I have a brother, he's much younger. He's got two little kids who are 2 and 4. He works in humanitarian relief. His wife works for a US senator. They have no time. They're both very interested in social justice, but they have no time to do anything beyond their jobs. They're not in that season of in real investment in activism outside of their work. When the boys are older, that will undoubtedly change.
Mm,
So yes, I think there are seasons of things. I think that, but I also think that that your archetype can be situational to an extent, that in a certain circumstance, you might behave in a way that you would not normally behave. So if someone was attacking your child, you might be the shyest person on the planet, but you're likely to stand up like a lion if someone is attacking your child.
mhm,
And so it depends on the circumstance and on where you are in your life. If you are a retired person and you have resources of money and time, yeah, you are in a different place than my brother is, who has no time resources to spend whatsoever. So it does fluctuate. And also, we change and grow. And we need to recognize that and appreciate that.
mhm. Yeah, for a personal story, I was in the military for 26 years as a chaplain, and so I have this like big social justice thing in my soul, and like I would want to go to protests, but the UCMJ, you know made me be like, well, you can only do so much. You have freedom of speech, but you gotta, so on and so
Right.
forth. And so, but now I'm retired, and I'm like, I'm out to the marches. I'm going out to the
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I mean, your job circumscribed what you can do, and now it doesn't. And that is something that I think a lot of people can relate to, is whether it's their job or their family situation or their financial situation. As those things change, you can change and adjust what you're doing to match the circumstance.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. We had just another question pop up. The question is, I always thought of activism as loud. How do you define activism? Am I gonna say she defines it in this book? So, but Omkar, can you go ahead and give your like right on the
Yeah.
spot definition?
Yeah, activism doesn't have to be loud. That's why there's this huge category of indispensable. You never know these people's faces. Okay, so an example I like is, so Dr. King's March on Washington in August 1963. There were 250,000 people on the mall that day.
Mm,
We don't know their names. We don't recognize their faces. But without that 250,000 people, Dr. King would have been a tourist at the Lincoln Memorial. It was all of those people down on the mall who elevated what he was doing to the point where it became national news.
Mm,
And so, they might have been singing, but a whole bunch of them may not have been. They
yeah.
might have just been, I mean, I actually have friends whose parents met at that march, right? Yeah, I know, it's wild. Um, and they went out of a moral certainty,
Mm,
but they weren't particularly loud people.
right.
So you don't have to be loud to be an activist. Active means to be in action, to be in motion, right? To be doing something. It doesn't have to be something that the whole world ever hears about. It doesn't even have to be something your family ever hears about if you don't want them to, right?
Hmm.
You can quietly write your letters. No one knows who you're writing to.
Hmm.
You can make your phone calls when no one's home if your partner happens to be on the other side of the political divide from you. It can be quiet. It doesn't have to be loud.
Hmm. And it matters.
It
The small actions matter.
They matter. And I'll just tell you really quickly. So people think, oh, what does it matter when you call a congressperson? Typically, I mean, things are different right now, but typically they get so few calls that 20 calls can shift their position on something.
Mm,
Now, it's a bit different now because they're getting a lot more phone calls,
right.
but to just keep that in context, most people never call their members of Congress. The overwhelming majority never do. So if you are a caller, you have disproportionate influence on your member of Congress.
Mm, yeah. That's Yeah, and I hope people kind of hear that, again, the activist piece, the being an advocate piece, it's not about going big. It's the little things that really matter.
Yeah, yeah.
And in your book, I like the way that you kind of like sort of like kind of like summer it down to a few key takeaways. The first key takeaway: make activism routine and put your focus less on the size of the action and more the habit of the action. Your second one: find your community.
Yeah.
Working alongside with people who care about what you care about makes it all the difference. So, those on this call or on this webinar, we are church. So maybe we start there. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, church is like such a great opportunity for community. I mean, church is a community. I used to live in Savannah, and there was a church that I attended when I was there. And that community was just amazing. It was such a wonderful group. And it wasn't like everyone had the same politics. They didn't. But there was this sense of people really having the best interests of the community at heart.
Mm.
And that was really important. That was really nourishing.
Hmm. And within our denomination, a lot of our congregations are a lot older. They're
Mhm.
you know considered senior citizens, most of them, majority of them. And this idea of micro activism, again, it's not like about you need to march, from Delano, California, all the way up to Sacramento. We don't need to do that. We
No.
we can do it with micro actions.
Yes. I mean, something I noticed on Saturday at the marches was how many older people were there. There
Mhm.
were a ton of older people, and I thought, good. And there's there are reasons for that. And one of the reasons is older people tend to have more resources and including time than a lot of younger people who are trying to just keep their families afloat and keep the kids from doing anything that they don't want to read about in the paper.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, we have one of our one of our commenters. He said, "Rocking chair rebellion." That's what
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Uh, Here's another question that popped up. What do you do when even your microactivism is hit by political fatigue?
Ooh, I mean, yeah. I believe we all need to rest. It just, resting doesn't mean stopping forever. It means taking a break.
Hmm.
And this is where also community really helps, because sometimes when we are just tapped out, we can just say to our community member, our friend, whoever we're working with, I haven't got it right now, so I need you to, step up, and then, but don't let me fall off the wagon entirely. I'm just taking a break.
Yeah.
And we do that for them. This is
Hmm.
this is the thing about working in concert with other people, is it's not all on us. So
Right.
when we inevitably get to a point where we're just, we just need to be toes up on the couch, there is someone else doing the work, and we know that they will come back and bring us back into the fold if we've been away too long.
Yeah. And we as the church, we say this, but we don't practice it very well, of what you're saying.
You know, I have to say, after the election, I took off the rest of the year. I was exhausted. I
Mm,
was physically tired. I was emotionally tired. I was freaked out. And I just was like, you know what? I mean, I did the bare minimum that I had to do, and everything else was like, someone else is going to have to pick up the slack because I haven't got it in me. And then, I marshaled my energy, and I'm back at it. But I'm sure that there will be other times where I'm like, I need a couple of weeks off. I need a month away, because this is going to be a long battle. What we're fighting for right now
yeah.
is a long battle. And so I don't want people to burn out, which is the other reason for micro. Micro allows you to actually hear your own rhythms and to
Mm,
respond to your own rhythms. There's not so much noise that you can't hear yourself. And you need to hear yourself. Your body will tell you when it needs rest. Your mind will tell you when it needs rest. Your
right.
soul will tell you when it needs rest.
Mm,
And we should pay attention.
right. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Um, the person, Tanya Lopez, friend of California, out in California, she's been down in California. She puts in the book Rest as Resistance by Tricia Hersey has
Yes.
been how she's been doing it, so
Yeah.
Rest as
Yeah.
Resistance, that's a great.
And it's true, because, rest is, in a society that's constantly telling us do more, do more, do more.
Right.
Stopping is resistance. It's just, as I said, you don't want to stop forever.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Um, Cynthia Scott asks, and this is probably a question that I need to answer. What actions are the denomination focusing on that our congregation can help support locally? Uh, well, I mean, we have a lot of resources out there as a denomination. We have the Disciples Justice Action Network. We have the Justice and Advocacy Mission through DHM. We have a new Office of Prophetic Witness. William Barber is leading that for our
Oh, that's
denomination.
wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, so we have a lot of things out there. Not only that, we got the National Benevolence Association has resources out there. We also have Green Chalice doing environmental justice work. So we're across the spectrum. So it's just a matter of like really engaging with the resources that we have out there to help you do your local work. Um, yeah, but I also would say get yourself a microactivism book.
Thank you for the plug. Jose, can I tell you that I just looked and saw that there's a question in the
Oh yeah.
in, and the question is from Elijah
Okay.
Burton, who says, how can we help someone who's overwhelmed and thinks they need to engage in everything? How can
Mm,
we begin the conversation to help them understand microactivism?
there you go. Yeah.
And I really want to answer that question, because it's honestly, it's a matter of faith. You have to have faith that there are other people working on the things you are not working on. You
Mm,
have to have faith that you are not in this alone. You have to have faith that people are going to be holding you up as you would hold them up, right? And so I think that the way you begin the conversation is to say, I know how overwhelming everything is right now. And none of us is going to do this by ourselves. We are going to do this as a community. And the way we best serve our community is to focus. Focus will get us much further than being diffuse and scattered. And, you know, just acknowledge the overwhelm. It's real, it's justified. Focus is a discipline, and saying no to a bunch of things means you get to say yes really wholeheartedly to the one or two things that are most important to you.
Wow, that's so prophetic. You should think about preaching.
Oh, thank you. My grandmother would be thrilled to hear you say that.
And come to the disciples. But anyway, let's if somebody wants to really connect with you after this, you know, I know you have a coaching sort of service sort of thing that you do. How do people connect with you?
Yeah, they should just go to my website and there is a contact page and they can email me through that contact page. So go to omkariwilliams.com. And there are also resources on my website. I also have recently added a playlist that music for the revolution that people can find, because I find music is really helpful.
Yeah.
And you know, because music is about joy, and joy is something we need to really stay connected to in these times. But you can go to my website, there are resources. You can sign up for my weekly micro-activist action, which comes out every Tuesday with something you can do, typically in 10 minutes or less. And then I've just started doing something which is on Thursdays. If you sign up for the newsletter on Thursdays, besides the newsletter, I send out a Tell Me Something Good post where I list some good things that have happened in the world, because it can be really easy to focus on what's not working. And I want people to also recognize how many wonderful things are happening and how many wonderful people are doing incredible things.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope people will take advantage of the opportunity. I hope people will go ahead and purchase your book. You can get the book anywhere, pretty
Yes,
much.
but go to bookshop.org rather than the the evil empire.
Right. Or just find a
Or your
local
local
bookstore.
bookshop.org supports local
Yeah.
bookstores, or you can order it directly through your local bookstore. Yeah,
Right.
I'm really big on keeping our dollars where they do the most good and the
Mm,
least harm.
right. Yeah. Like I said, it was a small little bookstore and it was just sitting up there and I was having a good time with it. So.
Bless that bookstore. And oh, so if people see a picture of my book in a bookstore, I
Uh-huh.
love getting pictures of books of my book in different bookstores
Oh,
around the
okay.
country. It's really fun to see it out there in the wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. Um, and friends, if you have any more questions, again, newchurchministry.org, we're going to repost this webinar. It's going to be up for grabs. If you were able to come and participate live, then go there. If you have any questions, ncmadmin@newchurchministry.org, you can email us. One of us will answer you. When I say one of us, I mean Wesley King. The right hand person of New Church Ministry, or Nadine Compton, who is the left hand of this organization, helping us with our social media posts and everything else like that. And again, I'm Kari Williams. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a great webinar. And I want to have bless you on your work. It is a blessing. It is a ministry that we need, and you're filling our cups. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really, truly lovely experience. I'm just thrilled to have been able to speak with you. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Well, that is it for today. And I wish you all very good spiritual health.